Okay, folks, so it's Mike here. Um, Bo says that words matter and appearances matter, and trying to, you know, words matter, and we should at least try to keep up the appearance, or we should vote for people who at least try to keep up the appearance. Um, yeah. One of my comments from one of my earlier videos says that, you know, anybody who voted for Trump is deplorable. All Trump supporters are scum. And there's a stew there, and I'm going to try to get some nuance out of this. Um, we had some buildings in New York that were bombed. Blew a 6-foot hole in the 6-story hole in the basement of the World Trade Center, 1994. At the time, the way we handled that was Interpol and international law enforcement, things like that. You know, just the overt and covert means to track down Osama bin Laden after he bombed the World Trade Center. Fortunately, it didn't collapse. Now, 9/11 comes along in 2001, and instead of using that same means to track people down, everybody's got a taste for war. And oh, look, there just happens to be a Patriot Act ready to go to clamp down on dissent. And oh, look, we found these vials, and all sorts of weapons of mass destruction are being planned to use against us, and all sorts of other lies were pushed by the media. Um, Remember, newly freed from their fairness doctrine about 10 years ago. So they could push narratives. They didn't have to tell the truth anymore. And they would never, ever, ever get called on it. So we and, you know, some people marched in the streets against it. But in spite of all that, with almost nobody voting against it, Bernie, um, we invaded two different countries, slightly apart, and got into two of the America's longest wars, most unnecessary wars. Millions of people have been killed in those wars. So, you know, and yet we're forced by the system to vote for those people afterwards. So, are we all scum because of that? Now, I'm willing to grant that Trump was a special danger to the Republic because he's still trying to steal the election. So, he's a little bit more deplorable than the rest of them. But there are reasons people have for not supporting Biden. You know, that Patriot Act that he claims to have written, for example. You know, and there's lots of reasons, and they've been told lots of stories by their media that they watch. And you've been told lots of stories by the liberal media you watch. I'm assuming you're liberal. You're angry at me right now. So, it's important to have situational awareness. You're not going to get that from the mainstream because they're all pushing their narratives and they're doing it for reasons, all sorts of reasons. Some of them, you know, there's no vast conspiracy. It's just the way the system works. It just kind of organically arises. So remember, the powers that be like the status quo, like us all angry at each other, and social media just happen to make it easier for them to keep us mad at each other, because the algorithm seeks out things that you're interested in or upset by and pushes you towards it. So, you know, if I make you angry and you downvote or upvote or share or whatever, even though you disagree with me, the algorithm's happy. Yay! Now, I would rather, you know, give you some situational awareness and help diffuse the situation so that we can put a stop to all this, which is why I'm worried about samizdat, which is the way that people in the Soviet Union got information around. Basically, everybody had their own copy of it, of things that they found represented the truth, and if they got caught with it, they went to jail for their copy. Um, so, I'm not going to repeat what other people say. I'm going to say what I believe and only what I believe. Um, you know, so lunch brunch being canceled, there's like so many interpretations of that. Um, but the one where we stop talking to the other half of the country and basically do what the rich people want us to do, no, I'm not for that. Um, you know, I'm not for forgiving Trump for anything either. I mean, that would be nuts. There's criminal laws. Remember, we have laws for this kind of stuff, and courts, and systems of evidence to weed out all this stuff. We have to trust those systems. It's like the whole thing with the elections and the recounts and the lawsuits. Go ahead, push the lawsuits. I'm uncomfortable with the media saying, "Oh, Trump won." It's really close. All the evidence that I can have, just being a guy in his garage, says that Biden won. But it was a squeaker. He's got no mandate. If maybe people hadn't been burning down towns and, had, mostly peaceful protests with fire behind them on the TV screens and stuff like that. Or, the other way, if Trump had just worn a mask, if they hadn't burned down the cities, or if Trump had worn a mask, the election would have swung wildly in a different way than it did. So, what we need is we need actual progressives who are going to represent us. Because right now, if you look at what we want and what gets voted for, there's actually a negative correlation. If a working man is likely to want something, somebody who has to go to work, versus what the rich want, the rich are going to get it, and it's always going to be towards the rich. So for me, there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. I mean, Trump was a special case. Other than that, oh, squirrels on the roof. Okay, so Trump was a special case, but there's no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats as far as I'm concerned. There are a couple outliers, like AOC, who's really pissing off Pelosi and crew. More power to her, because she actually wants to represent the working people. Bernie wants to represent the working people. Biden claims to do that, but then again, he claims to have written the Patriot Act and, helped set up the mass incarceration of, so many people. So we need to work together, talk to each other, stop listening to the narratives. And the way we're going to do that is we're all going to have to point cameras at ourselves, or type, or, podcast, and just talk to each other. If we can stop identifying ourselves as Democrats and Republicans, because I'm neither, and most people just pick the label that's nearest them. We need to start, as I've heard other people say, we need to go for policies, not people. Policies, not parties. We need health care for all. The downside of health care for all is that if you have something that's not going to kill you in the next few days, the lines are going to be long. So maybe you have to pay for it yourself to get past the queue. I mean, I hear a lot of stories about people coming to the U.S. because, in other countries they have something that isn't going to kill them, and they want it taken care of now because it's bothering them. Maybe in the U.S. we could take care of the things that bother people too a little better. We can put people on the moon. We can do that kind of thing. We're spending more on weapons and military than, than everybody else, basically. Everybody else added up together. Maybe some of that money could go towards making people, making people's lives better. Everybody's lives better. Freebies for everything? No. But, we're all here. We're all doing the best what we can. 10 million jobs evaporated because of this pandemic. In other countries, they kept people in their jobs, even if there was no, the government picked up 80% of the tab and said, okay, keep people on the payroll until this is sorted out. Just keep people on the payroll. Imagine if 10 million people were still on payrolls instead of unemployed, even though they were making less money, the economy would actually be picking up because they wouldn't have to be going to work. They wouldn't have to be paying for childcare. They would have, it would have probably have improved during a pandemic. But no, here we are. Situational awareness, we need to work with the hand we've got, which right now is we just got rid of Hitler Light, or we're in the process of it. Hopefully we actually do. I mean, it looks like we will. But, the people we're left with aren't much better. They're already trying to blame progressives for their almost not squeaking out a victory. No, it's not our fault that you, Nancy, Schumer, and everybody else don't give us what all of us want. Most Americans want health care. Most Americans need some sort of payment until this thing is over, until you guys get your act together and get rid of the coronavirus. So, sorry, this has been a bit of a ramble, but, that's how I feel about things right now. Thanks for your time and attention. I'm going to compress this a bit, throw it up on YouTube, and wait for it to upload forever. Thanks. Bye, everyone.